Conqueror has many of her original features, engine, gearbox, or even owners. How, I hear you all ask? How's that? Well, it all comes down to good preventative maintenance, and we're all part of that programme. All of these checks we do ensures we have a functioning and reliable boat to take out. In this next video I'm going to take you through the handover procedure for Conqueror. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but needless to say the handover folder contains all of the details of what's expected of you and the valet if you choose to have actually somebody to come in and clean the inside and the outside of the boat. So if you just look in the front of the folder, it's all in there. And then we ask you just to complete one of these forms, please, just a series of engine and boat checks. It's double-sided, and then you'll just see at the bottom here there's checks that we ask to be carried out every 3 to 4 weeks, and then just sign and date it. Brilliant. And I know it might sound like overkill, but there's another form where we record engine hours, and we need that to make sure that we're up to date with our 200 or 400 hour servicing. And you'll either message or email Colin Jones or Pete Green with that information, and then just any purchases you've made, whether you've done the clean inside and outside the valet, the quantity of diesel we've used, and so on. It's just purely for our record and to make sure again the boat's operating perfectly okay for the next person who's taking over from you. And then we have a deep cleaning schedule which includes some of the tasks that aren't done from week to week. Some are monthly, some are quarterly, some are annually, and we just ask our owners just to share some of the load and do some of these, and when you've done them you just basically initial to say that they've been carried out. And lastly we have just a checklist when we put the frost protection on for the winter, but again that's all explained in the folder for you. If you should have a problem, however large or small, one of the committee would like to hear about it, please. We're not going to tell you off, we just need to know so we can try and help you as best as we can. So one of the checks you're going to be doing is in the bow area. On the port side, just see that little container in the corner there with the yellow top. That's the hydraulic reservoir for the bow thruster. So you're just going to unscrew the lid and just make sure that the fluid is actually topped up. You might need to take the little yellow filter out the top, and if you just look closely you can see a maximum mark on the side of the reservoir itself. And if it does need filling, that's gearbox oil goes in there, EP90, and I'll show you where the stores of the lubricants are in a minute. Another check is the header tank to the central heating boiler. So if you just go into the wardrobe near the fixed double bed, we're just going to remove the cover. Just a little bit of a wiggle, and there you can see the reservoir at the top, and you should be able to see through the reservoir actually where the level is. If you do need to top it up, essentially you just unscrew this at the top, and just carefully, because we've got the impeller in there, you basically just remove the impeller. There's the impeller, and then you just essentially top up with fluid into that reservoir. If you have trouble seeing the liquid through the container, there actually is a dipstick you can actually put into the reservoir. If it does need topping up, we just top up with the 50% antifreeze solution. And just be careful when you screw the lid on that basically the wire is actually clear of the threads. As a double check before you leave, make sure the pump is switched off. You'll hear it whirring around if not, so the rocker switch is in the neutral position, and also the ignition switch is off, and the dial is actually set to the little white circle that you can see there. So I'm now lying on the bed. We've pulled it away from the port side window, torch in hand, and the idea now is underneath the bed we've got our hot water tank laid on its side, and we've got 2 water pumps. So one of the checks we're just going to do is we're going to look down here with our torch and just make sure that basically there's no leaks. You don't need to be a plumber. All we're just looking for is basically anything that's wet. It's wooden board, so you'll soon see if there's any dampness. No, we're all good. Next check is what we call the cabin bilge. So the bilges for the whole of the boat, other than the engine, are in the cabin bilge. And because the boat slopes slightly towards the back, if there's any leaks or any problems, it's going to show up in this cupboard. So we're going to open the cupboard and basically get rid of all the stuff in there so we can access it underneath. The good thing about emptying this cupboard out at the end of the week is it gives you a chance to have a good tidy up. Just out of interest, you'll see the yellow thing in front of you. That's our Karcher window cleaner. We actually use that for sucking up the condensation in the autumn and the winter. Charging leads also in the cupboard. Really handy little tool. So now let's take you to the cabin bilge, if I can show you. So here we go in the cupboard. So what we're going to do here, we're just going to lift up this flap, and it just about holds in place. You see that little bit of wood there with a hole in the middle? We're going to stick our finger in that. There we go. Lift it up, and we're going to look in the hole, and it's dry as a bone. So all okay. As they say, Bob's your uncle. While you're in there, just have a. It's all plastic pipe, but it's always a good idea just to do a quick double check of everything, just to make sure again everything's in order, which it is. So also in that cupboard above the cabin bilge, you'll find a whole variety of lubricants and paints. There's touch-up paint in there, as you can see, 3-in-1 WD, you name it, it's in there. Dustpans, brushes, rollers for doing the sides of the boat, and just that little easy dry container. That's actually ours, but Martin Joseph put me on to this years ago. It's a really good like drying cloth and cleaning cloth for your dog. You're probably well aware we're pet friendly, but that cloth is absolutely superb for either drying the dog off or just cleaning off their paws. One of your last jobs is going to be to pump out, and you should have a little key to undo the caps, or there's one in the electricity cupboard by the steps. And you're going to water up from a drinking water supply, and you'll have a key, same as the diesel cap, to undo the water cap. And there's a hose reel in the bow area with a separate piece of hose to put in the tank itself. So we'll be doing our daily engine checks during our trip, but these are the final engine checks on turnaround. So we've lifted up the rear mats, we've lifted up the engine board and told the crew not to come through the doors. We've removed the shore cable just so we don't trip over it. And now we're going to get down into the engine compartment itself. Now you see, look, these channels here, this is a job that we ask people to do every 3 or 4 weeks. So this hole here, this channel will collect rain, and this hole drains to the outside. So any rain that hits this deck will basically go down these holes. So we just do need to make sure that these are always just kept clean, right? And there is actually what looks like a big pipe cleaner in the glory hole here. So the easiest way to get down in the engine, and I'm not the most agile of people, is I'm going to step down and I'm going to put my foot very carefully onto that piece there, onto that blue piece of metal, and I'm going to stand down. Can you see that shiny bit there by where it says clean on? I'm going to put my other foot there, And now I'm in. So the first one, obviously the end of the week and daily, we're just going to ask you to just do the dipstick and basically check the oil level. If you can just see underneath there, alongside the batteries, that's the coolant, the same as your coolant in the car, and you can see maximum and minimum in there. So it's a check on that. And then the blue shiny box there, you can just see that's our hydraulic fluid. So we're going to ask you just to check down. You've just got to sort of not get right down there, but just bend down basically and have a look. There we go. Look, you can see that bronzy coloured cap. That is the gearbox oil fluid, and you can see it actually says on there nip up only, which means it shouldn't be tightened up really tight, just nipped up, right? So you're going to lift that up. When you undo the nut, you'll see a dipstick with a level mark on it. It can be difficult to see the oil level, so you can use a piece of tissue to ascertain the correct level. Apologies for the upside down picture. You're going to check all the engine oils and lubricants against the list you have on your turnaround checklist. There's something you should have been doing every day anyway, just a final check of the side bilges, they're dry. If not, you just need to mop out, and there is a mop and bucket provided in the engine compartment. And this is, if we can see it down here, this is what we call the stern gland. So this is the only hole through the boat. Basically it's where the propeller shaft actually goes through the back of the boat. You can see it's dripping very, very slightly, which is quite normal. And then we've got a container actually underneath here. We always make sure, you'll see there's like a red bilge pump. That is kept to one side of that container. And then alongside it up here is what we call the stern greaser. So this is something you do each day after you finish motoring. Get up to it. Basically you just get hold of it and you turn it until you've pushed the grease through actually onto the shaft. It's quite normal just to get a few little drips. You may need to empty that container down here every so often, but you certainly shouldn't be getting loads and loads of water down here in the side bilges. You may get water, well, we shouldn't get water actually underneath the engine. This is self-contained in there, and we have absorbent mats that we change every so often actually underneath the engine, but that is completely separate from the side bilges, because that's oily waste and shouldn't be getting into the canal. And if I just show you up here on the control panel, obviously got horn, headlight, bilge pump. If there ever was an eventuality where we had a lot of water in those bilges, you can actually just press that. And a nice little touch is we've got something called the crew alert, which you press when you need another beer. No, I don't really mean that. I have to say you get really cross if you use that a lot, or somebody does anyway. We're also going to check the gas before we go. Admittedly you're actually seeing the bow now without the cratch cover on, which does make it a little bit easier, but anyway, let's go ahead. So first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to swing that triangular window back. I'll show you how we do that. So just unbolt it and you'll find it's now going to give us a lot more access to be able to just lift up the cover, clear everything under feet so you can get at it properly. And then we're going to lift over the bow hatch, and now we can actually see our 4 gas bottles. And what we're particularly interested in, see this white lever here? Just have to lean over, and lean the camera over there. You see that little triangle? If that shows red, the direction it's pointing with the pointy bit is actually saying now those 2 bottles are empty. So in other words, these 2 bottles here, Now I'll refer you to the operations manual as to basically how you get them out, but just read that first. And it's pretty straightforward. Just take your time, and what the way I do it, basically, I've used this bit of mat here. Now let me just show you. I just use this as a bump mat. I put it over here, and then essentially I put the bottles on that, and you can lean over and you can just effectively slide the bottles down into place, because obviously they're quite heavy. If you've got an issue with your back or whatever, just ask the marina or wherever you get your gas bottles. Sometimes it's cheaper to get them not at our marina. It's worth asking for the price around. We'll certainly let you know. Just look in the log. We normally tell people where it's cheap for gas. Yeah, just ask them to do it for you, and some marinas are actually pretty good. They'll actually change it for you. And you're not allowed to have a share in a narrowboat without being responsible for the brass. So there you are. There's the brass out, and your plastic gloves. So get polishing.